I have my partner in crime, Big Neal, to my left, Neal Coulong. It is Wednesday, December 28th. We got a couple of days to count down into a new year. Want to welcome everybody to the program. Neal, how was your Christmas?
Christmas was great, Lance. I hope yours was as well. And I hope that everybody listening in had a fantastic Christmas, holiday season, whatever it is that you celebrate or why. It's all good here on the new standard. We're just happy that you're here. We're happy that you're listening. We got a big week in front of us, Lance. Big game. The Steelers have yet again found a way to make a bad team be somewhat interesting and relevant in December, and I have no idea why.
It is called the game of football. And that's why we watch, because it's entertaining and because the outcome is not always predictable and logical. If you guys want to chime in and be a part of the experience, go to YouTube and do a search for the New Standard and Lance Williams or Neal Coulong. Also, you can search for the podcast on any of your podcast feeders that you like to use: Google, Spotify, Apple Pods, whatever pods that you want to use, probably even Tide Pods. You can find us on Tide Gain or even Cheer Pods. Any type of pods, you can find us. Do a search for the new standard. And Neal, I want to jump into Neal's Nuggets. And before we jump into this week and before we break down the game again, want to send my condolences to the family of Franco Harris and to Steeler Nation on the loss of Franco Harris. Any numbers or anything, any nuggets you want to jump into from that game that we may have missed, given it was a very late night and it was Christmas Eve? Anything you want to touch on that you didn't touch on from Saturday evening, Saturday morning, Saturday
I'm not
evening?
I'm not sure how different this is from what we said, but what I think the main takeaway from this game, one, they really didn't have a great reason to have won. And the thing that I keep coming back to, Lance, is how many times we said that last year. We are entering, if we haven't already, again into the realm of a team that doesn't do anything well except win games. I mean, do you realize this team is one game below 500? I mean, it
Yes,
really
I
it just doesn't
yes.
make any sense. They were 2-6 at one point. They got throttled by the best teams that they played. Should have gotten destroyed in a couple other games. They started a bad quarterback to start the year. They replaced him with a rookie quarterback who was not gifted physically to an exceptional level. Their defense lost its best player for a large chunk of the season, and I would argue he's not even close to 100% now. Yet they're winning enough games that for me, they're a step away from overachieving. I said 7-10 on the optimistic side. They're 7-8 now, and it's not as if the next two games they play are not winnable. If anything, they should have lost to the Raiders. The way that offensively, the way that they played, the offensive line, which I've been praising as of late, took at least a step back against Las Vegas. Not a strong team performance all around. The run game reflected that to a large degree. This is a game that was in the elements, and they needed to be much better than they were. They were not. From a planning and strategy perspective, I'm not sure exactly what the offensive plan was, but I did see Max Crosby destroying tight ends consistently.
Oh,
Not a
yes,
guy
he
who can block with
was.
tight ends. We laugh when they do that with TJ Watt. I don't think it's all that much different to say Max Crosby needs an actual blocker if you wish to hold him off. He was a massive part of why their run game did nothing. Not mistakes you want to see late in the year, but there were mistakes all the less until, Lance, until the Steelers entered that territory in which they go to a different level. It's not, it's very dramatic the way a lot of these games are turning out, but they somehow go above and beyond what they've been in that game, even to an extent what they've been that season when the game is on the line. Last two possessions of the game, They won in the sake of field position, scoring the touchdown in 8 plays. I think Pickett was 7 of 8 on that drive. Played his best ball by far in that game. He was bad. A lot of bad throws. Blame the elements to some degree. It's as simple as that. You can't throw all that well in those conditions. You're not going to. The skilled guys will get it done, but you're not going to dominate through the air playing in that weather, that wind. Not the easiest thing to do. Pickett played well at the end of the game when the team needed him. Now, the fact the team needed him was largely because of him throughout the game. Bad interception ended his streak. Offense did not play well. They stepped up when they had to. Defensively, Cam Sutton made the play of his career to get that interception. Normally, we're talking about TJ Watt taking over at the end, and you could see it. TJ was going all out on those last few snaps. Not to suggest he was dogging it before that or anything, but he's a big moment guy. He wasn't able to make the plays, but they still had other guys making plays. This looked a lot like the Atlanta game, another team that's probably not all that good, but you can't help who you play against, and you have to make plays when the plays need to be made. And that's what the Steelers did. And it's a microcosm of a team that 2 years in a row now, in my opinion, has grossly overperformed the level of talent that it has. And that's got to land somewhere. I don't think it's the show right now to talk about Mike Tomlin, but they're well above and beyond what they should be. I know that, and they're not a good team. They could be significantly worse than they are. That's not much of an accolade. It's not anything to hang your hat on, but they're much better than they should be, in my opinion. And we saw that in the Las Vegas game.
That's like, Neal, when you said that, it's like when you date a 7 and you're thinking, I hate to say it like that. When you date a 7 and you say to yourself, well, at least she's not a 5. I mean, that's not really like what you just said is not really a compliment. But one thing you did say that is a compliment about this football team, and we'll jump into the Donovan Signs question a little bit more detail in the offseason and the business season. What are your pros and cons of Mike Tomlin this season? And big up Mel and the brothers at Q Sci-Fi. And you know what Mike Tomlin's biggest strength, one of his biggest strengths as a coach, and you were kind of talking about it is, and let me pull this up. He creates teams and players that have grit. And grit is defined as courage and resolve, strength of character. Here's the example sentence. He displayed the true grit of a Navy pilot. His teams demonstrate a high level of grit. His teams have a character where they tend, they might not be the greatest teams, but they tend not to break in high pressure moments. And for a team like this, the way they want to play, that's absolutely necessary to win games. But another thing you said is alarming because I think we clearly both believe that they are in rebuild mode. They are sexy tanking, they are treading, and they are trying to rebuild this thing. And one thing Tomlin teams have also learned to do to the detriment of themselves and the fan base who cheer for them is they've become masters of being mediocre. Mom, that could be a good t-shirt. Mom, masters of mediocre. They've become masters of being mediocre. They're they're not great. They're not bad. They're kind of mediocre. They make the playoffs, and that's why they haven't won a playoff in a while, is because they've mastered mediocrity, where they're good enough to get above the line.
They move up to mediocre. that's what they're in right now. And we've talked about this a bunch. I will say this probably during some type of postmortem of the Mike Tomlin era in Pittsburgh. I think there were better overall coaches. I think better coaches were more successful, though not many. But I will say this, and this can be considered a backhanded compliment. No coach was better with less talent than Tomlin was. There were just more who were better with more talent, if that makes any sense. If you want, I think that's a great question, Mel. That's really where I was going with this. How do we want to define mediocrity? And in this particular construct, I would say mediocre is roughly 500. We can call it that. My opinion, though, is to put it into proper context, we have to define what could have been expected from the roster that they had versus the schedule that they had. And the last 2 years, this team has been anywhere from 2 to maybe 4 games better than what they probably should have been. We have seen, though, in the past, and I don't always agree with this, but I just know that a lot of people feel this way. You give him a roster that should win 12 games and they win 10. That's fair criticism to Tomlin. I just know that right now, if your end realistic goal is to qualify for the playoffs with the roster that they had, I sincerely doubt any coach currently in the NFL would have gotten them closer than I think they'll probably land. They've exceeded my expectations, maybe not so much in wins and losses, but they're a better team than I thought that they would be. And this is playing out very similarly to how I thought it would. I just didn't think they would be at the 7-win mark by week 16. It's a quality season from one perspective. It's a disaster from another perspective. And at the end of the day, the Steelers still just don't have loads of talent at marquee positions. They're not a strong offensive line, though they're improving. They don't have a great quarterback, though he's improving. There are things that they need to do up front on the defensive line, though they have another all-pro level season coming from Cam Hayward. By the way, NFL Week 16 Defensive Player of the Week. Go Cam. Good on you for that.
He was incredible.
Oh God, he was a monster. Early, it was just like, holy shit, he turned the clock back like 6 years. He was unstoppable. They had to put 2 guys on him by the end. They're getting winning performances in games that they shouldn't win. And that's you have to put that onto leadership. He's getting these guys to play above and beyond what they are. The question, though, that I have always debated Steelers fans with has been, realistically, how good do you think some of these teams have been? Many of them were not as good as people wanted to think that they are. They just overachieved. And the last 2 years, while the end results haven't been great, and if they qualify for the playoffs, it'll be the 7th seed, and they'll get bounced easily by some combination of Kansas City, Buffalo, or Cincinnati in round 1. I'm sure that'll happen again. But they are able to maintain a competitive team with the talent they have and continue to build. The duration of our show, Lance, has centered around sexy tanking. And they're still kind of there. I'm not sure if they've grown enough yet, but they still need another offseason. This project has lasted longer than our original estimate was. They still need another good offseason, but they could be a lot worse than they have been.
Yeah, I think they're going to need several off seasons, unfortunately, because I think when you take a deep dive and you take a look at this team from a 64,000 foot perspective, they have a big issue, and that's big plays on both sides of the ball. They don't generate many, and they give up a bunch in the passing game, and they're going to have to get that fixed. But to not belabor the point, though, the last thing I do want to say is, just to the question of the pro and the con, what we're both saying is Mike Tomlin is a master of getting more with less, but not a master, but he gets less with more. Teams that are supposed to be great, sometimes they fall short, and teams that aren't so good, he gets a ton out of them. There is a skill to being a coach that wins with superior talent. You can easily mess it up. People always think it's very simple. Oh, yeah, you just got superior talent. We can go out there and win. And, they criticized Phil Jackson for years. He had Kobe and Shaq, but you can mess it up. You can mess it up. You can underachieve, and you cannot win. There's a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure, and a lot that still goes into it, even when you do have superior talent. We're going to jump more into that, Mel. We're going to do this segment and jump into that mail because it's an interesting question. Why is he a more with less guy? I'm not sure. But the number I wanted to jump into in this game, and correct me if I'm wrong, if my number is wrong, Neal. Uh, Boswell was 2 of 4 in this game, correct?
Yes.
He was 2 of 4. He missed a 43 yarder and he missed a 52 yarder. He made a 44 yarder and he made a 40 yarder in the game. Um, do we have a Boswell problem? Because the way I look at it, the way the Steelers want to play, and I think that's really crystallized and become very clear over the last several games. They're going to run it a ton. They're going to win. They're going to play in an ugly fashion to try to keep the score down. Really rely on their defense and minimize the impact that the quarterback needs to make on the game. Don't turn it over. Run it solid. Play good defense. Try to turn guys over. Try to win it that way. Kind of an old school ugly style. But I think essential in that, and I think this is a good this will dovetail into the game itself. Is Chris Boswell. Chris Boswell, 50% for the game. Chris Boswell this year is only 15 of 22. That's 68.2%, which is ranks last in the National Football League over the 10 games that he's played this year. Is it official? Do we have a Chris Boswell problem? Should Steeler Nation, should the staff, should the team be concerned with Chris Boswell and his inconsistency that has cropped up this year, given particularly the way that they're trying to win football games?
Kicking, it's so specific. Trends in kicking are hard to they're hard to buy into, and this is why kickers, you see them when they get cold, they get cut pretty quickly. It's not that they're incapable of rebounding. It's just that everything is so moment to moment when you kick. The only thing that matters is the last kick and the next one. Boswell, plain and simple, he hasn't been the type of kicker that we have seen. The difference really is probably 1, maybe 2 field goals. That doesn't change the fact that he's I'm looking here, 6 for 9 in his last 5 games. He missed 1 against the Ravens in the loss earlier this year. He has been, I think this is more problematic in my mind, 3 of 5 from 40 to 49, 2 of 3 from 50 plus, in a game that is largely predicated on the success of the kicker from the 40 to 49 yard range, going up against probably the best kicker who's ever lived, and a guy that he's actually not having the best of seasons that we've come to expect from Justin Tucker. We absolutely should be concerned. That does not mean Boswell cannot nail 4 of 4 and the Steelers pull off a 20-18 win in this game. It just means that going into it, it's not an automatic. It's not a lock. They've had issues with this. Calais Campbell is one of the best field goal blocking internal linemen in the history of the game. He is very hard to stop. He is very large. He is very athletic. He gets a couple blocks a season. I'm not sure if people realize how rare that is, but there really isn't any player like him in that regard in NFL history. Excellent at what he does. He's a load. That's a significant problem, especially when your kicker hasn't been very good from 40 to 49. That's the key range. And Boswell's stats this season show that, largely because the Steelers don't have a very good offense. If they get in the 40 to 49 yard range, it usually means they got one big play, failed in every other area, and are needing to kick on 3rd and long, because that's usually what ends up happening to them. For the Steelers to be competitive in a critical game for both teams, one that is probably going to see the return of Lamar Jackson, Boswell is going to have to be as sharp as he has been. It doesn't mean that he can't, but yeah, I'm absolutely worried about it. 15 of 22, if we want to go long perspective here, 15 of 22 is not bad 30 years ago. Today, it's pretty bad. Most kickers are well above that. He just hasn't had many opportunities, and they've had some problems executing when they've had them. I'm not incredibly confident in that regard. I'm picking Baltimore in this game simply because, and this is usually why I would pick Baltimore, they have a better special teams unit than the Steelers do. Baltimore has always prided itself on special teams. They're very good at that, and that sets a good tone in a game like this. So Tucker over Boswell right now. I think Boswell's issues are not going to necessarily just go away. I do have faith that he can correct them. And the sample size that we're looking at right now is not very big. It's just that the last 5 games, he's really not been good. So
Yeah,
problem there for sure.
yeah, and Doc Holliday, Boz is fine. He's been hurt. He'll work through it. He's done it before. Noah, Boz, this isn't nearly as bad as 2018. Here's the thing, and a lot of times, and this is the kind of the way that I frame the question. A lot of times in real life, two things can be true, um, but often in sports, we want to make them either yes or no, true or false. And I think in the case of Boswell, I think both are true. I think right now they do have a Boswell problem. He's not consistent. I mean, period. I mean, you kick 4 field goals in a game, you miss 2, make 2. That's not consistent. That's not the consistency that they want. He has not been consistent this year. He has not been as good as he's been in the past, and the standard that he's and the expectation that he's created for himself with good performance. I mean, when you're 15 of 22, it's not good. That's dead last in the National Football League. So that is a problem. But what is also true is what Noah and Doc said. He's fixed it before. And so you may have confidence as an organization that he will fix it again and that you have faith in Boz to get it right. And so you stick with him and you show your faith in him and you're confident in that will happen. So I think both are true. They have a problem, but I think it's a problem that they feel is correctable. But it is a problem nonetheless, particularly with the way that they want to play, especially going into this game. And as we saw in the last couple of matchups, one of the biggest things in this game, in my opinion, and disagree with me if you want, Neal, this comes down to the running game on both sides of the ball. Which offense is going to run the ball better? And when you look at this game, over the last 3 games, the Ravens ran it 25 times for 107, 36 times for 249, 42 times for 215. In the last 3 games, they've run it for 571 yards on 103 carries. That's an average of 5.5 yards per carry. Now, over the last 2 games, the Steelers have done very well in that regard in terms of stopping the run. They have only given up 79 yards over the last 2 games to a paltry 2.2 yards per carry. What gives in this game? And from your watching of the first matchup this year, when the Ravens went nuts, what was the problem in that game? Is it correctable? And do you think the Steelers' defense in this matchup will be much better at stopping the Ravens' run?
I'm not confident in saying that, and largely because of the stats you laid out. They're not going to, because they don't. And on top of that, Baltimore wants to run the ball. If it's something you want to do and you're committed to doing it, you tend to rack up cumulative stats. What I would point out that, yes, while they've had success on the ground, and they certainly did in the last meeting, they only scored 20 points. You need to be balanced. You need to be able to do both things. And they did not with Tyler Huntley under center in the last game. I feel Lamar definitely will add an element to their offense. They might be able to put up a few more points, risk a few more turnovers, but they'll have more explosion offensively. At the root, though, and you'll hear the Steelers talk about this for the rest of the week, they need to be prepared to stop the run. Did an excellent job against Carolina, who I don't know how many turnarounds have been bigger than that in NFL history. They went from 21 yards against Pittsburgh to 320 the next week. Not something you see all that often, but it's a team that is capable of running the ball for sure. And the Steelers stepped up and played well. Baltimore is as diverse and as difficult a rushing offense to prepare for and stop as there is in the NFL. That's a significant challenge for a defense that, by and large, has not been incredibly effective overall. They stopped Jacobs pretty well, I felt, on Saturday. You got a Herculean effort from Cam Hayward in that game. Can you get that again on a short week? I don't know. We've seen Cam play really well in 1 week, get a short week, and get rolled over. That's going to be the game, though. It's going to come down to the Steelers' ability to force takeaways based off their ability on early downs to stop the run and force the ball into the air. I don't think weather is going to be an issue in this game. Doesn't look like it's going to be anything significant, anything that they're not going to be able to handle. So this is an even strength game. I think Baltimore is a better team. If Jackson is back and he is loose, he's able to go. I honestly think John Harbaugh circled this game and said, this is the game we're going to bring Jackson back for. We're going to make sure that he's rested for the next month. We're going to bring him back for this because we're probably going to be in good playoff position by this point anyway. And it's a game that at this point we're going to need to win. If we wanted to win the division, they would have to win their next two anyway. This would be the game that you bring him back if he's rested, if he's healthy and ready to go. So sorry, yes, long week. I don't know why I added the math wrong on that. Hopefully Cam gets another day of rest. Hopefully they all do. And they were able to fix some things internally as they go. We've seen pluses and minuses out of their run defense. Their gap contain has been okay. You get up and down performances from Devin Bush, which is better than it was last year for sure. Miles Jack is a guy that probably needs some rest as well. I think he's dying a little bit. They asked him to do a lot early on in the season. I am hopeful in their ability to compete in that manner, but if you don't stop it on early downs, you get them into 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. There are so many different things they can do. They'll eat you up. They will win situationally if you give them the opportunity to do it. 1st and 10 and 2nd and 8 are going to be the key things for the Steelers. They're going to have to earn a short stop on 1st down. They're going to have to earn incompletions on 1st down and try to set up significantly important 2nd and long downs. And if they're able to win those, you're in a much better position against a versatile and diverse offense. I am worried about Baltimore winning those early downs. If they do that, if they set up 3rd and 4 and in, they're a really tough offense to stop over the course of a drive, and they're capable of putting long drives together. So huge, a lot of expectations are coming down to the Steelers' run defense, and I'm not sure that's really where they want to hang their hat at this point this season.
In your opinion, I mean, you've watched all of these Baltimore matchups. I mean, giving up 571 yards on the ground in the last 3 matchups, an average of 191 yards a game and 5.4 yards per carry. I mean, those are huge numbers. And when I watched the game, I thought in spells you would see a case of, where the choreography is bad with one particular person. One particular person in run defense loses contain and a guy bounces a run. I mean, you saw it time and time again where, 7 of the guys did what they were supposed to do correctly. A couple of guys didn't do their job. They popped one. Well, I mean, what's your thought in terms of why the Steelers struggle so much against Baltimore? I know it's diverse, but they see it. They've seen it. It's a division opponent. They've got a ton of film on these guys. I mean, do they just have better players? Is it better scheme? I mean, if you could just narrow it down to, a couple of things, why do they struggle so mightily as the stats suggest against Baltimore's running game?
There aren't many people that shut down Baltimore's running game. To make this out to be a Steelers problem, I think is ignoring the significant emphasis Baltimore puts in its running game. They've drafted and paid multiple players involved with the run game. They have maybe the best rushing quarterback in the history of the game until Justin Fields comes around. We're all hoping that pans out. They bring in run heavy, versatile, very smart offensive linemen that can play multiple schemes. And they have an offensive coordinator that excels in coming up with creative ways to run the ball. They want to run the ball. This is why they're a top 5 rushing team every year. Everyone's going to struggle against that. What I would suggest, and this is tough in today's NFL, but 150 rushing yards a game is a pretty impressive number. 150 passing yards a game is not an impressive number, and 300 total yards a game is not an impressive number. You can run the ball to a very high level, be very successful at that. That's what you're basing your offense on. And if you're not passing well along with that, your offense isn't going to do much. It's kind of I don't want to call it a choice because it's not really one or the other. You need to be able to do both. Baltimore, conversely, has yet again one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the game. They have great tight end that they can't get the ball to because their backup quarterback can't throw. Their starting quarterback isn't the greatest passer you're ever going to see. They've missed time in their offensive line like they usually do. Ronnie Stanley is playing for the most part. He's one of the best in the game when he does. He hasn't played a whole lot the last 3 years. So you put all that together, they're not consistently outstanding over the course of a season. But one thing they are going to be able to do is run the football. So for them to do that against Pittsburgh prolifically, like they did last time, they were 200 plus yards in their first meeting. They won 20-18. That wasn't a dominating performance by any stretch. They couldn't get the ball in the end zone. So it goes to show it's not any just one thing to look at. That's why cumulative stats are really kind of tricky. Steelers gave up a ton of rushing yards and not a whole lot of yards overall. Which is more important? I don't know. It depends on the situation. Where are you? They converted third downs. They got chunk plays. They controlled that game for the most part. They won on the strength of their running game, but not like it was a dominant offensive performance. A couple chunk plays was really the difference between 130 yards and 200. That's easy to say. They made the plays. You got to give them credit for making the plays. So for me, I honestly think it's what they do well. It's their fastball. You have to expect it. They're going to have some success with it because they're really good at it. But if you can neutralize it to some degree, you're going to roll. You'll be able to dominate them offensively because they're not a dynamic passing team as well. They're not good in that area. They don't have dudes on that side of the ball, with the exception of Lamar and Andrews, that can make differences in their passing game. Deshaun Jackson's playing for him, for Christ's sake. I mean, when was the last time Deshaun Jackson was any good? Marcus Robinson. The Ravens are the premier team in the NFL of signing a receiver who's 4 years at least past his prime. That's all they ever load up within their offense. Their hope was Rashad Bateman, who's an excellent receiver, been a big fan of his since he played at Minnesota. The hope was he'd be able to take on a Deontay Johnson level load for them on offense while still getting Andrews down the field to make big plays. He went down with injury. Didn't work out. They don't have anybody to replace him. So their passing game is almost non-existent. They have to run the ball a bunch. They are capable of winning doing that, certainly against a team like Pittsburgh. But if Pittsburgh can win those early downs more often than not, set up third and long, they can hold this team down to 16 points, something like that. It might have a chance of winning the game if they do that. It's not an easy task against this team. If Lamar is back and healthy, it's really hard to do. We'll see. This is usually how they end up, though. It's a black and blue game, Lance.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is, I agree with that. It comes down to situational football, particularly in this matchup. And rushing yards don't always equate to points. The symmetry isn't the same, where if you said you gave up 400 yards passing, you probably got blown to smithereens. If you gave up 250 yards rushing, you probably didn't. I mean, you probably lost, but you didn't get absolutely blown out. Yards per attempt is still a better metric in terms of predicting winning than yards per carry, but it's still a problem. And it's just very interesting that the Steelers have continued to struggle. I want to jump into on the other side of the football, the Steelers offense against the Ravens defense. I wanted to jump into something that Noah wrote. We did a great job against Marlon Humphrey last time. Hopefully, we can actually take advantage of that this time. How do you think Kenny Pickett plays in this game? Got knocked out early in the matchup, in the first matchup. Humphrey, Pickens did have some success on Humphrey, played pretty well in that game, that first game. How do you think the passing game looks with Kenny Pickett at the helm against this Ravens defense?
I don't know. It honestly, I don't think their pass offense looked exceptional in the last game. That's because the Steelers quarterback kept throwing it to them all the time. They got Humphreys on a deep ball. Got him on the touchdown too, I believe. Drew holding or pass interference on him, and the Steelers scored 18 points. It's the plays versus the 10,000-foot level. You're going to make a couple plays most games. Even this offense, well, maybe not this offense so much, but most offenses will make a play or two a game. Big plays are really hard to come by against the Ravens in a Steelers-Ravens game. Big plays usually swing it, whichever team can land that haymaker at whatever point. Baltimore did it the last time. The Steelers beat the Ravens 4 times in a row prior to that, and they got that haymaker play. I don't know if the Steelers passing game is capable of that against a good pass rush. So can they protect? Can they scheme stuff up to protect Pickett in the pocket? Is he going to stay in the pocket? Is he going to get hurt again? I mean, we're seeing Tua drop every other week now with a concussion. What's going to happen with Pickett? That's a concern. A lot of the offense has opened up with his ability to run down the field. If you guys want to watch something that'll really put you in a good mood, Brian Baldinger on Twitter broke down the Steelers' final drive in their win against Las Vegas. Strongly recommend looking at that. You're seeing some great things coming together within this offense. Are they capable of playing in that fashion the entire game? I don't think so. A lot of things need to go that way. So the question is, can he protect the ball? Can he move the chains? Can they hold on to possession for extended periods of time? And back to the original topic, Lance, can Boswell convert on a couple field goals? He's going to have to hit 40 to 49 in this game. That's just usually the way it plays out. Low scoring. If he can get 3-4 field goals, I like their chances. They're going to have to score 2 touchdowns along with that. That's just the way it is. I don't know if they're capable of scoring 2 touchdowns. Can they get a pick six? Can they get a fumble recovery? A lot of things up in the air. I am just not overly optimistic with the consistency of their passing game. We have seen stretches of games in which Pickett has commanded an offense that was very effective. That usually just doesn't happen against Baltimore. I mean, we saw the Killer Bees put up 20 points against Baltimore. What's Pickett, Deontay Johnson, and Najee going to do? I mean, that's not, close to the Killer Bees. I don't know how much explosion they have, and Baltimore knows that. They're able to play up to stop the run and take their chances on the outside, and I think that's what Baltimore will do.
One thing the Steelers have been able to do in the matchup, and we're both thinking that Lamar comes back. Reginald Rivers said, Lamar might be rusty when it comes to throwing a football. One thing they've done with Lamar is they've been able to turn Lamar over. And as you said, looking at this offense and looking at this game, it's one where you get big plays and turnovers, and special teams in the kicking game really come up pretty big in terms of who's going to win this game. I could see a scenario in which the Steelers are quite effective against this offense, and particularly against possibly a rusty Lamar, as he comes back, where they might be able to turn Lamar over a couple of times. And I think it's something that they're going to need to do if they win this game. So I think that's a good place to transition into the predictions for this game. Who are you picking for this game? I know you kind of said it a little bit, but what's the score in your
I'm
prediction?
I'm feeling like 25-19, somewhere in there. A field goal laden game, probably a 2-point conversion attempt somewhere in there. That's kind of usually how these games play out. And I feel um, Tucker can kick. I feel more confident he can get back to a a 4-for-4 from deeper down the field, probably a little bit better than Boswell can. And I think they're more capable of getting a second touchdown against this defense than the other way around. Baltimore's just a better team. I hate to say that because it's not like Baltimore is dominant or anything. They've got plenty of flaws, but you want to get into teams that win games they just shouldn't win. It's not the matchups with them that's against them. The way they play in some games, the way they come back, they're capable of doing that. There are guys, defensive and special teams players, that just step up and make plays for them every single week. They're good like that. They're confident like that. I don't think Pittsburgh is quite at that level. I'm going to say 25-19. I'm going to stick with that. 25-19 Ravens.
That's an interesting score, 25-19. So, yeah, I don't even want to do the math in terms of that kind of weird
Field
score
goals and missed
combination.
2-point conversions is what
Yes.
I'm going with.
Yeah, I'm like 25-19. Huh. I was just thinking in my head, how many games have been 25-19? It can't be many. I'm sure there's been a few. I'm gonna, now that we're sticking with funny scores. Um, how about we go 11-10? Let's just go, something really strange.
Steelers Chargers 2008 at
Yes.
Heinz Field. I was at that game.
Let's
11-10, the only 11-10 regular season game in history.
let's go something strange. Let's go 12-10. Um, let's go 12-10 Steelers. Let's go
12-10.
a game which Ravens have their typical success on the ground, but they're inconsistent in scoring areas. Get a field goal, get a touchdown. Steelers kick 4 field goals. Boswell is back, baby. They kick 4 field goals. Steelers win this game 12-10, and somehow their playoff chances continue. Because there is a scenario in which, right, they can
Definitely
win
something.
out. They can win out and still not go, right? I don't know
Yeah,
those
yeah.
scenarios.
It's going to depend on a lot of things. The last 2 wild card spots in the AFC are pretty much up in the air. I'll pull up the playoff projections here. But yeah, I mean, it certainly can happen. It almost did last year. I remember saying on the air, which would have been the greatest cold take of all time, we weren't even going to watch the Sunday night game because there was no way the Chargers and Raiders were going to tie, which is what would have eliminated the Steelers from the playoffs, and they came damn close to tying.
Yeah, 7 seconds. Within 7 seconds of a tie.
Yeah, the
I mean, it was
Chargers clinched. So you're looking at 7-8 Jacksonville,
who's going to
8-7
win a
Miami,
division.
that's probably losing their quarterback. 7-8 Patriots and 7-8 Jets, both of whom have tiebreakers over the Steelers. 7-8 Titans, who are going to start Malik Willis and not win games the rest of the year. And the Steelers at 7-8 with the Raiders at 6-9. So the Steelers are pretty far back. They need a lot of help, but you win out. That means everyone above them has to win out. And yeah, I mean, win out.
Yes, like Bob said, only believe all things are possible. Steelers will beat the Ravens and Browns.
The
Uh,
Steelers, if Jacksonville, Miami is the real challenge. You don't know what's going to happen with their quarterback or if that's even going to matter. But at 8-7, if they win 2, they're in. They're playing the Patriots, so there's a loss coming between one of those 2 teams. The bottleneck of 4 teams at 7-8, that's the Patriots, Jets, again, both of whom have head-to-head tiebreakers over the Steelers, and the Titans, who also are going to be down their regular quarterback for the rest of the way here. We don't know what's going to happen with Tua. We don't know what kind of team Miami is going to be. We did see what Tua was, though, in the fourth quarter on Sunday, and good Lord, I think the kid needs to take a seat. let Teddy KGB step on in, see what he can do. But if the Steelers win both of their games, I like their chances. There would need to be
quite a bit.
A lot of things would need to happen. I don't think the Patriots, Dolphins won't. Not without Tua. Patriots play the Dolphins, so if the Patriots win that game and then lose their other one, they're 8-9.
Yeah, it's a lot of different scenarios, and like Doc Holliday said, since it's a night game, I think we'll know if the Steelers have been eliminated from the playoff hunt.
Which is kind of the idea. They're kind of banking on them not being eliminated, and that very well could be the case. We'll know, but there's value for both the Steelers and the Ravens. And it's the Steelers-Ravens game, so I'm excited about it being flexed. I think that's
I think that was a good move. I think that was a good move. I could see a scenario where the Dolphins lose out. Very interesting season, and I think definitely in the business season, we should definitely jump into that question of Tomlin: more for less, more with less, or less with more. What is he as a coach? I think at his core, he's a defensive guy. I think but I think he's flexible too. He'll play whatever he needs to do in the style that he needs to win, but he's not afraid to play in a style that's smash mouthy, run the game, be tough, grind it out. He's willing to get wins any way that he can. And hey, Felicia, she said, I'm the homer. Should I be worried? We usually lose when Lance picks us. But I've been pretty hot this year. Neal has been tepid this year with the predictions. But Neal is
7-10. I'm landing pretty close to what I overall.
Yeah.
Week to week picking in August is kind of hard.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I have to take some credit somewhere. I've been a little hot lately.
You picked them last week. I didn't pick them last week.
Yeah. I picked them last week. And in this game, Neal's picking the Ravens 25, Steelers 19. I am picking the Steelers 12-10 over the Ravens, and that's absolutely not going to happen. 12-10 is probably no way going to happen. It'll probably be a shootout.
It's so crazy to think though that 12-10 is like an unrealistic scenario between two teams that don't have good offenses and kick a lot of field goals. There's no way 12-10 can happen. 12-10 could happen.
Like they can't be that inept in this game, but
I don't know.
They very well could. I mean, it could be a game where at the end of it, they both
like a heavyweight fight in the 15th round, and neither boxer has a right hand. That's the way they play these games. They circle each other. They don't throw a whole lot of stuff often, and when they do, it opens them up. So they're terrified of losing on the big play. They keep it conservative. The big play they hope to make is on the ground. And because of that, their entire defense sells out huge to stop the run. And in Baltimore's case, that didn't work out so well, but again, they couldn't throw. They dominated the game statistically, certainly on the ground, and they scored 20 points.
Yeah, so it's going to be another one of those knockdown dragouts. I hate that it got flexed to the evening. Makes it tough for us in terms of doing a show, but it is what it is. We will grind it out and pound it out. Again, I hope all of you guys had a fantastic holiday. Please bring in the new year safe and sound. Don't drink too much. Hopefully a Steeler victory on New Year's Day. It's on New Year's Day, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on New Year's Day, not New Year's Eve. So, hopefully, January 1, 2023 will be brought in with a Steeler victory. That would be very nice. But again, I hope all of you guys bring it in safe and sound. Remember to like and to subscribe to the show. Want to thank everybody for riding with us this year in 2022. And we will be back next year, bigger, stronger, faster, and all that other good stuff. And as always, we're going to conclude the program. Big up to the Bison. I see you with your Bison stuff. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Go Steelers, and Happy New Year.